Hey everyone, set 4 is almost upon us, and we have already seen some really powerful cards spoiled. Today I'm going to talk about how I see some of the top cards spoiled and how they're going to go into the top decks in the meta right now, namely Han, Sabine, Jango. And then I've got Tarkin up here too, because I think that Tarkin's going to benefit a lot from some of the spoilers that we've seen. So, set 4 is certainly one that's bringing the heat. I think we all know set 3 was a little bit of a lower powered set. And that is not the case with set 4. Set 4 is, it's got its fastball. You're seeing legends that are spoiled, they're really powerful. We're seeing just general cards that we look at and we say, wait, is that right? Is that really doing that? Does that work that way? And we're gonna see some real power levels increase. So I'm gonna spotlight some of the cards that have stood out to me as just being incredibly powerful. And I'm going to start off with one that I can see slotting into my Sabine deck and giving it an even. Sabine's already a deck that has a lot of sort of broken, very aggressive draws, but it's getting an ability that it hasn't had before, namely a unit that just can't be removed using a removal spell or a bounce spell. So that is going to be this Chewbacca card. So this is one of the new card types we see, which is it's a unit, but it can also go on a vehicle as a pilot. That's the new sort of one of the big features of set 4. So the card reads, we've all probably seen it before, but it's a 5-drop, 5/6, so reasonable stats. It cannot be defeated or returned to hand by enemy card abilities, and that text transfers to the vehicle it's piloting as well. So a couple things that stand out here. Similar to like a Lurking Tie Phantom ability, in that it can't be destroyed by a card like Takedown or Vanquish, I guess would probably be a better example because this does have defense 6 as a regular unit. So it's, you can't be removed that way, but it also can't be returned to hand, so it can't be waylaid, which Lurking Tie Phantom did not have. So it sort of creates this protected card, but it's also got a pretty good stat line. If you're able to put this on, now the sort of exciting part is, okay, 5/6 for 5, it can still be destroyed by a unit in combat that doesn't have protection from that. So 5/6 unit, okay, it's not the best stat line. It's very reasonable, but a Poe ECL is gonna kill it. Han Solo unit's gonna kill it. 6 attack isn't too crazy. However, when you put this on a turn 1 space unit, you're now attacking for probably 6 or 5, in some cases even 7. We'll see that on the next slide. Or a few slides down the line. So basically, you're getting this situation where you're creating a very powerful space unit on turn 2 that's able to attack right away, and the opponent really doesn't have a way to answer it. So they're not able to, keep a removal spell. They can try to sort of attack into it, but this is going to dwarf a lot of the things that you're going to see. So sort of a pretty traditional example. Opponent plays any unit on the ground, and you go Green Squadron A-Wing. Their next turn, they're basically forced, because this card exists, it's almost like they have to answer the Green Squadron A-Wing right away, because if they don't, you can just slap a Chewbacca on it, attack for 6, and really that's all you need to sort of put a ton of pressure on. So I'm really excited about this card. I think it's going to create a lot of sort of head shakes of like, hey, I lost to a turn 2 Chewbacca. And one thing to note is it is an upgrade, so we are looking at cards like disabling Fang Fighter, destroying it as an upgrade. You can destroy it, so we'll see how that all plays out. I know the full rules document hasn't been released, but because of this card's existence, we're probably going to see more upgrade removal. All right, the other card that I think is incredibly powerful is Blue Leader. This is a card that stood out to me as just being really, really strong. 3/3 Rebel stat line is already really good. However, because of set 4 offering this new piloting mechanic, I think we're going to see a lot of instances of a sort of ship you kind of know is about to get a pilot on it. And this card having ambush and being a 3/3 means that you're probably going to be able to take out some of these strong lines. So if you go back to the what I was just talking about with Chewbacca, a turn one Alliance X-wing, a turn one vehicle of any kind that you're expecting that turn two pilot to pop on. Well, Blue Leader is going to be able to take that out, and they're going to be stuck with that pilot in their hand. You can think about like a deck maybe needing to burn an early ECL to kill a unit that a space unit on turn one. Well, Blue Leader is that in sort of a one-stop shop. It has the ambush built in. 3/3 with an ambush is really good. And then you've also got the ability to play this as a 5/5 ambush on the ground as well. It's just a very reasonable card. 5/5 ambush, I think, is a great card. It's really cool thematically. It sort of swoops down. It's a rebel as well. The other interesting thing is that you can have a ground unit that you can then pilot because it's still a vehicle. Another interesting component here is you can actually ambush in space the way that these abilities will work. I believe it works this way. Where on turn 5, or 5 resources, excuse me, you could theoretically ambush in space as a 3/3, and then after that ability and that attack resolves, provided the blue leader lived, you could actually move it to the ground arena because you could stack the 2 triggers and it would get the 2 experience counters that way. Sort of a neat little feature. But I think this card's going to see a lot of play. It's sort of a good answer to a lot of these pilot decks that are going to pop up. And it's also just a really strong statted unit that has versatility. You can think about sort of the ability to shift lanes, that lane shift type concept. This card is good sort of in both avenues there as a defensive answer to the lane shift and also as a proactive answer to the lane shift. Pretty cool card. Gets around Sentinel too if you think about it after the 5th resource. If they've got a Sentinel on the ground, you play it in space. If they've got a Sentinel in space, you can play it on the ground. It's a really, really versatile card. All right. The last 2 slides, one thing about Chewbacca and also Blue Leader, they were rebels. Decks like Sabine specifically are focused around the rebel mechanic, rebel keyword, I guess, or card type. So we're seeing more rebels in set 4. So the last couple sets we've seen, Poe Dameron and Wrecker went into Sabine as incredibly powerful cards, and really no downside at all of those 2 cards. But the one thing they don't have is a rebel synergy. So we're seeing in set 4 more rebels, also more Imperials. We're seeing more Underworld too, but some of these themes are coming back, which is exciting that they're not sort of dead. And we're seeing some pretty cool cards. So the ones that I'm excited about for Sabine, R2-D2 piloting for 0, a 0 cost upgrade, is really interesting in the sense of like the way the game goes with actions. Meaning like someone might claim and then just get their math wrong because you actually have like lethal, because you have a space unit. Now their math, they always have to think about this. So 1/4 on the ground, which is pretty reasonable. I like that you can sort of continue to stack upgrades with R2 on a spaceship. You can think about playing like a A-Wing and then playing an R2 and then maybe also playing a Chewbacca and making it even bigger in these sort of space wars that you're going to have to go to. So I think R2 is really exciting. It's a pretty versatile card as well. Millennium Falcon is good stats, 3/4 for 3. I think we're going to have to see, like if you have your Blue Leader as your ambush, you're still going to want to have more space units to maybe ECL in to kill something. So I think the Millennium Falcon is just a 3/4 space unit. It's a really good stat line. We might see, cards like Red 3 not played as much just because there's going to be so much action in space that, it might be dies to like sort of these newer vehicles, these newer spaceships that have bigger stat lines, right? Or maybe we'll see more Red 3s because you can actually put upgrades on it in pilots. Who knows? But I think these larger stat line ships are going to be really important to kind of win the space wars. Leia, we're seeing the uptick in Sundari Peacekeeper. Leia is a 3/4, not a 3/5, but she does have Restore, and she lets you attack with a pilot. So I think we'll see some Leias in decks. Not a super exciting card. I would have liked to see the power level there maybe a little bit higher, maybe like a 3/5, just because Leia is such a iconic character, and her leader's kind of taking a back seat. And the other unit is in yellow only, so I would have loved to see this one just a little bit higher on the power curve, but I do think the card is pretty playable. And then the last but certainly not released is Red Squadron Y Wing. So Red Squadron Y Wing is a card that if you slap a Chewbacca on it, can attack for 7 damage on turn 2. This new indirect damage can go to base as well. Allows them to sort of split it up almost like an overwhelming barrage, but they get to split the things up and can also go to base. So kind of a funky color combination with Red Squadron Y Wing. You usually think of Gold Squadron, but I guess there were Y Wings in Red Squadron as well. Death Star 2 battle, you can see in the background. Pretty cool art on that one. But I could see this card, again, the Space Wars, and we're seeing it. We're looking at this card attacking essentially for 4. Just another thing that it holds a Chewbacca pretty well. And I think we'll be looking at that, right? We'll be saying, how often do you get your Chewbacca draws? And this is a card you'll certainly include if you're kind of leaning into the Chewbacca deck type. All right, so that's it for the Sabine cards for now. But I did want to touch upon this card, Planetary Bombardment, as sort of highlighting the power level of indirect damage. It's really got my head spinning. 8 damage is such a large number. And I think at first you're saying, okay, 8 damage, they're going to spread it around some units, they're going to have to do some math. But what I think about with this card is 2 things. One is a deck, well, first of all, it's just the overall 8 and then maybe even 12 in decks with like Ruthless Raider or something like that, almost like a burn deck. But I think that's really what it opens up for me, is the concept, is there sort of this bounce, removal, burn type deck? The existence of this card is really interesting. You can't really play a deck that doesn't have units, like a Bosk Blue. If the opponent, let's say that, you're going removal, you might see this card in sideboards out of like a Sabine that says, yeah, you know what? You're going to kill all my stuff, but I'm going to ping and I'm going to play this card and just do 8 to you in one shot. So that's an interesting sort of sideboard card for the aggro decks to answer, more control-y decks that aren't playing as many units, that are more event-based, that really punishes those decks. And then another thing that is interesting to me is like a bounce deck. So like a Han Red or like a Jango that's playing Waylays and, open fires and is kind of removing things and is really leaning into this strategy, but then it's saying, you know what, but I'm also going to end the game by burning you out. So this card's a real puzzle about how it, what's the best home for it. But 8 is such a big chunk of, 30 or 25 point bases. We're seeing other numbers. We are even seeing a 35 point base. But 8 is a lot, and 12 is essentially the game. So if, my concept in this is, hey, if there's no units out, how do you actually maximize it so that the majority of this damage goes to the base? So an interesting card for sure. All right. So now we're shifting a little bit into sort of the Jango helpers. Triple Dark Raid Jango Devastator is something I'll be trying to do. Turn 6, you get to essentially do 4 damage to their base because it says you get to control where all the indirect damage goes. So it's an immediate burn spell on the 6th resource turn. And then if they don't have a Space Sentinel or they don't have a way to answer this Devastator, it's an extra 9. So we're talking about, 13 damage from one card on turn 6. We already were looking pretty happy with Fett's Fire Spray and Ruthless Raider off of Triple Dark Raid. But now we have something that's even goes over the top. You can imagine like any control matchup. Now you're going to be able to play this card. It's another burn. Like, it's just so insane the haymakers you can slam. I love that it's not like a 9 cost or 10 cost card. Like 8 is pretty reasonable. With Triple Dark Raid, it comes in cheaper and it goes back to your hand. You can sneak attack that the next. It gets out of hand. So just having another ship at the top end is going to make Jango, really hard. It's never going to fizzle. Jango, one of the knocks on Jango is it does play Ruthless Raider and it does play Fett's Fire Spray, but if the opponent can kind of get past the equilibrium point, it could maybe outlast you if they're a more controlling deck, but Triple Dark and Devastator is going to absolutely not allow that. And now, another thing that Jango's lacked is really 4-drops. I think most of the lists don't play any. Some of them might play 1 or 2, like a Forlom or something like that. But there's really not like a synergistic 4-cost space unit. until these two cards. These cards are absolutely insane. IG 2000 is going to be nuts. It's essentially another variation on like a P38. It's a 3/4 stat line, which is pretty solid. But you can, deal the damage to three things before the Jango flip. You can tap one. If Jango's out, you can tap three things. That's insane. You'll be able to play it on that fourth turn if you don't have the triple dark raid. You'll be able to curve a little better. Fett's Fire Spray, it's probably going to be more of a staple in the Boba deck, but even in the Jango deck, just when you play it, you get to do an indirect damage. If they put it on their base, great. That's another just sort of ping damage that they're going to adhere to. But if they put it on a unit, you could then tap it with Jango's ability. So that kind of puts them in a pretzel. And then it's a when played in on attack ability. So they have to answer this or it's really going to get out of hand. So Fett's Fire Spray, super good card. And also IG 2000, we're seeing sort of a throwback to the old Decipher card game where the bounty hunter ships became, they got released in the old Dagobah expansion set, which was their set 4, by the way. And now we're seeing a lot of the bounty hunter ships in the SWU game. So cool throwback there. All right, so that's Boba, or excuse me, that's Jango, and that's Sabine. What about Tarkin? You mentioned Tarkin, or I mentioned Tarkin earlier. A lot of it comes to two things. One is that, in set 1 we saw a lot of rebels. We saw Imperials, but the Tarkin deck was not able to just be basically tribal, which is what it wants to, like tribal Imperial. And it sort of felt like it was missing a few spots on the curb to really have Imperials at every spot, and also kind of underdrop so you can use Tarkin's ability. So we got like good Imperials like Darth Vader, Emperor's an Imperial, but you don't have like a lot of sort of smaller units curves, 2 drops, 3 drops, 4 drops. You got Stormtroopers, but you just don't have enough, right? The Rebels have tons. Imperials felt a little outnumbered. But in this set, you're seeing more Imperials, and you're seeing really powerful ones. So Director Krennic, my partner in crime, Mike Gem, Bobby Sapphire, thinks this is the most powerful 2-drop that they've ever made. He's got a shielded 2/2, and then he's got the ability to make things cheaper. Super Laser Tech comes to mind to making that guy cheaper. But being able to play a turn 1 shielded guy that you can actually buff with Tarkin seems absolutely nuts to me. So you play him on turn 1. Maybe they do some damage to him on turn 2. You can imagine, I guess, like a Tarkin Town ping type deck can maybe pop his shield. But you're going to be able to make this guy a 3/3 right away. And if he has a shield on him, he can really snowball. So he can kind of get out of hand very, very quickly. And then he's also allowing you to play your other cards cheaper. So one of the great things about Tarkin is you're able to make this large unit. I had some success with the Lurking TIE Phantom Tarkin. But if they answer it, you kind of go right back to work with something else. So I think that card's really cool. The Shuttle is another example of just like another really good Imperial, but it's a neat one, and I wanted to point this out, because it says, when played, when defeated, you may take control of a token upgrade on a unit and attach it to a different eligible unit. Well, this unit is shielded, and I think that kind of got missed by a lot of things. So you can actually play this card as a 3/4 space unit for 4, which is very reasonable stats, especially if you're able to put more tokens on it. But when you play it, you can actually move the shield to, let's say, your Krennic. Now your Krennic got 2 shields, or maybe they worked really hard to knock that first shield off, and you get to shield something else. So I think that's really cool. You can put a shield on a leader, which can be really powerful. So I think this card's like pretty busted. You can triple Dark Raid this in Jango, going back to Jango. You can triple Dark, shield something, and then pop this to hand, and then shield something else the next turn. So if I'm reading this rule correctly, and if I'm not, feel free to blast me in the comments, but I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do that. Or maybe it's not like in play yet when you play it, but to me it feels like those rules kind of are. So certainly let me know if you've got any judges and who are watching the video. Let me know. But if it works that way, it seems incredibly powerful. If it doesn't work that way, and I'm not a rules guru or expert by any means, I think it's still a really powerful card. 3/4 shielded. and then can get, buffed up by Tarkin. So you're seeing two shielded units that are really able to kind of take you home. So I think these aren't the only Imperials as well. So Tarkin's going to have, I'm really looking forward to building a blue Tarkin that just sort of curves to like 4 or 5 and just stays really low to the ground, uses overwhelming barrage, and uses Tarkin's ability like all the time, just have a ton of experience tokens. So that's one of the most that's one of the spots I'm most excited to build with the set 4 cards. All right, lastly is Han. Now I'm not a Han expert, but I do think that redundancy, Han's already a deck that's really redundant, and I think these two cards, Ahsoka, we just saw her spoiled very recently, adding another discard to Han's. You've already got Bodhi. She actually works really well with Bodhi because if you're playing against a Bodhi deck, you might be more inclined to resource your events and non-unit things. So then she comes into play, and your hand's filled with units, and you discard one. Now you have to tap something. So she's more of a discard element to me, but every so often to get an extra tap, that's great. And then the Mandalorian seems really, really powerful. Just being able to, first of all, the stat line's really good, 5/6 for 5, but being able to play this just as a unit and tap down a leader seems great. So you imagine like the Han mirrors, where sometimes being the first person to flip your Han can be really good, or just in general, exhausting up to 2 ground units. Like if you're able to play this on your flip turn with Han, you can tap down anything that's sort of waiting and sitting in wait to kill your Han. So it can tap their leaders. It can also clear the way for yours. I just think it's a really strong, versatile card. So you're looking at these two cards adding redundancy. We've already got Cunning to tap things, Waylay to bounce things. Now Mando taps more things. You've already got Spark of the Rebellion and Bodhi and Cunning to discard things. Now you've got Ahsoka to discard things and maybe tap something. So you're just going to have this really, really redundant Han deck that continues to build its armaments. So we're seeing the decks that are, it's sort of a rich gets richer scenario. We've got Sabine, you've got Han, you've got Jango getting all these new toys. But I am confident there's going to be new decks emerging from set 4 as well. The power level of the set leads me to believe that some of the new leaders are also going to be really powerful, and that we'll see some of the, maybe the, similar to what I was describing with Tarkin, we'll see some of the new cards slot really well into some older decks too. Maybe we'll see a rise in like a Leia deck. Maybe we'll see a rise in sort of some leaders that never totally got off the ground. And we'll see them get a boost. So like a Lando or something like that. So excited to see what people brew. Excited to hear what rules interactions with set 4 I got wrong. I know the chat's always really good about pointing those things out. But yeah, I'm really excited to open some packs and open up set 4. It's, less than 2 months away. We'll be ripping packs and getting ready for the next wave of OP playing with set 4. So it is a great time to be a Star Wars Unlimited fan, player, whatever it is. All right, till next time, take it easy.